Dragons. Dragons are perhaps the most recognizable mythical creatures of all time. They appear in almost every culture, from European folklore to Chinese legends, and even in ancient Mesopotamian stories. In European traditions, dragons were usually terrifying monsters, massive winged, fire-breathing beasts that lived in caves or mountains and often guarded treasure. They symbolized greed, chaos, and destruction. Villages told tales of knights who had to slay dragons to prove their bravery and earn honor. In contrast, Chinese culture saw dragons in a completely different light. Instead of being destructive, they were symbols of wisdom, good fortune, and power. They controlled the rain, rivers, and crops, which made them vital to farmers. Unlike the Western idea of fighting dragons, in China, people worshipped them. This contrast shows how dragons reflected cultural values. In the West, they symbolized fear and conflict, while in the East, they stood for harmony with nature. Unicorns. Unicorns have fascinated people for centuries with their image of purity and grace. Usually imagined as horse-like creatures with a single spiraling horn, unicorns were said to have magical healing powers. Ancient Persians believed that unicorn horns could cure poison, while medieval Europeans thought unicorns were so pure they could only be captured by virgins. These myths often connected unicorns to innocence and goodness, making them popular in religious art. But the truth is, much of the evidence for unicorns came from narwhal tusks, which traders sold for a fortune by claiming they were real unicorn horns. Even though unicorns never truly existed, their mythology shows how deeply humans wanted to believe in a creature that symbolized beauty, magic, and hope in a dangerous world. Mermaids. Mermaids, half human, half fish, appear in almost every coastal culture. In Greek mythology, they were linked to sirens, creatures who sang songs so enchanting that sailors crashed their ships trying to reach them. In African folklore, the water spirit Mamiwata was a mermaid-like being who could bring both blessings and curses. For fishermen, mermaids represented the mysterious power of the sea, sometimes beautiful, sometimes deadly. Historical records suggest that sailors may have mistaken manatees or dugongs for mermaids during long, exhausting voyages, but the legend lasted because mermaids symbolize the unknown. To humans, the ocean has always been both a source of life and a place of danger, and mermaids embodied that mystery. Werewolves. The legend of werewolves, which are humans who have been condemned to shift into wolves, is one of the earliest tales in the folklore of Europe. The fear of wild animals, illness, and the darker aspects of human nature serve as the inspiration for the concept. In numerous tales, an individual transforms into a wolf at the full moon, turning into a fearsome predator that attacks people and livestock. People in the Middle Ages were so frightened of werewolves that certain individuals were put to death following accusations of shapeshifting. Legends that caused hysteria became widespread throughout France, Germany, and Eastern Europe. The concept of the werewolf illustrates humanity's dread of losing control, the notion that beneath the veneer of civilization is a beast yearning to be released. Even to this day, werewolves represent that primitive aspect of us that we are unable to fully domesticate in horror films and pop culture. Vampires. Vampires are among the most enduring mythical creatures. Originating in Eastern Europe, they were described as corpses rising from the grave at night to drink human blood. Villagers feared them so much that they often dug up bodies and drove stakes through their chests, just in case. These stories were fueled by plagues when people didn't understand how diseases spread. The modern vampire image, elegant, immortal, and mysterious, comes from Bram Stoker's Dracula. But vampires aren't just European. In China, legends spoke of the Jianxi, a hopping corpse that sucked life energy, while the Philippines had the aswang, a shape-shifting vampire-like demon. Across cultures, vampires symbolized both the fear of death and the desire for eternal life. Phoenix. The bird that is associated with fire and rebirth is the phoenix. The ancient Greeks believed that it lived for hundreds of years before bursting into flames and being resurrected from its ashes. On the other hand, the ancient Egyptians considered it a sacred bird that rose from the flames. The phoenix was a representation of not only immortality but also hope. The phoenix served as a reminder to people that when civilizations collapsed, or when individuals were confronted with difficulties, devastation may pave the way for fresh beginnings. The phoenix became a symbol of resurrection and eternal life for the followers of the early Christian faith. The expression rising from the ashes is still in use today to describe those who have overcome difficult circumstances, which demonstrates how strongly this mythical bird continues to influence our imagination. Kraken. The Kraken is one of the most terrifying sea monsters ever imagined. Described in Norse legends as a massive creature lurking in the waters off Norway and Greenland, it was said to be able to drag entire ships under the waves with its enormous tentacles. Sailors lived in constant fear of it, and early explorers often reported seeing monsters that later turned out to be giant squids. But what made the Kraken unique was its scale. It wasn't just a predator. It was a natural disaster in the form of an animal. For seafarers, the Kraken represented the untamed power of the ocean, reminding humans that no matter how skilled they were, the sea could never be fully conquered. Cyclopes. The Cyclopes were one-eyed giants from Greek mythology. While often portrayed as savage and dangerous, like Polyphemus in Homer's Odyssey, they were also said to be master craftsmen. According to legend, they forged Zeus's thunderbolts, Poseidon's trident, and Hades' helmet of invisibility. The story of Odysseus tricking and blinding Polyphemus is one of the most famous Greek myths, symbolizing human intelligence triumphing over brute strength. The single eye of the Cyclops has been interpreted as a metaphor for limited perspective, immense power without true wisdom. They were both feared as monsters and respected as creators, embodying the dual nature of raw strength. Chupacabra. First sighted in Puerto Rico in the 1990s, the Chupacabra is a legendary creature that emerged in contemporary times. The farmers alleged that it targeted goats and other livestock, draining their blood by means of minuscule puncture holes. There are a variety of ways in which people describe the monster. The creature is said to have the appearance of a lizard by some people. It has spikes down its back and piercing red eyes. On the other hand, other people describe the creature as a hairless creature that resembles a dog. In spite of the fact that the sightings were subsequently found to have been the result of sickly or mangy animals in many cases, the mythos continued to proliferate throughout Latin America and even made its way into the United States. The Chupacabra is an intriguing creature, owing to the fact that its very existence provides indisputable evidence that myths continue to be prevalent in the modern world. People continue to develop monsters as a way of explaining things that are otherwise inexplicable, even in a society that is dominated by science and technology. This fact serves as evidence that the human imagination will never cease to exist.